Okay, I think it's safe to call it a slow news day. Well, most of the month, this month, before a big release next month, is going to be a slow news day. Well, I figured we would, as per usual, talk about certain topics from the forum. I like to go to the Warframe forum from time to time, especially on slow news days or slow news weeks, such as this. So let's talk about, is team synergy still needed? It's a question that someone had. And this is an interesting question that had sparked some responses and whatnot. So I'm going to share my opinion about it overall, and I'll explain what I believe they mean as well, okay? So what I believe they mean is that synergy such as, healing and someone to buff the armor or give energy, like days of old, you would have a trinity, which was very common to give you healing, and even some trinities would be um, energy vampire trinity. So they would give you energy and whatnot. Basically your basic support type frames. You one person maybe do the DPS, one person tank, one person supporting, helping everyone out, and then one person just going all around, kind of like your rogue style character. Well, Warframe hasn't, in my opinion anyway, Warframe hasn't been like that in years, okay? So basically, even your support frames that come out this year, or rather that come out recently, or probably that come out in the future too, they usually are viable on their own. They usually are very viable on their own. Take Noko, for example. Noko is the mushroom frame that came out not too long ago as of recording this. Well, so he can give energy with his mushroom, but he can also heal himself. He can do a decent amount of damage himself as well. You could argue that his energy ability is support, but he can also deal damage as well. And then we take a frame like Trinity, which is a good example of your support type frame. But Trinity is starting to show her age as far as support because the older frames were built around frames needing support. But nowadays, I feel like the new frames that come out don't need support. They are kind of jack of all trades. Actually, I can't think of a recent frame that came out that is strictly just support. Like they're only support and they're terrible in every other regard. Because most frames are really good all around. They can deal decent damage, they can do support as well type thing. They aren't glass cannons. They they can both cover their own back and cover their teammates' back as well. They literally can do both support and attack type whatnot. You could argue that, let's see, what frame would I even say? It would have to be a support frame. Okay, like Yes, the healing at support, the energy at support with Trinity was a good example because she did both of those. I guess you could say a tank is a support in a way, not really a support, but more like a synergy thing. Because a tank would normally serve the purpose of drawing aggro, right? So yeah, what you would want to do is have a tank that would draw aggro, but in a game like Warframe, tanks aren't really, tanks can deal a lot of damage as well. Look at Anarus. Anarus is probably a good example of a tank, I guess, because of his large mana pool, but you could make an argument that Valkyr is a tank because of her large armor amount. You could even make an argument that Rhino is a tank because of his ability combined with his decent amount of armor. I think he had real good armor, unless you look at Valkyr. If you compare him to Valkyr in terms of armor, Valkyr's always going to win. But I feel like compared to any frame that's not Valkyr, Rhino had a good amount of armor. So Rhino would be considered a tank. But even he can technically deal the damage himself. He, yeah, sure, he can buff. He is a support as well. He's a tank, he's a support because he can apply damage to everyone with his roar ability, which is good, but see, that includes himself as well. So there are two sides here. If you wanted to make Warframe into a truly everyone has to synergize, teamwork makes the dream work type thing. I feel like you would have to make it so support characters couldn't necessarily buff themselves. But if you do that, then you're just taking away something we already had just for the sake of synergy, which I don't think would sit well with anyone. Let's see what some people have to say. Okay, I've rambled about this quite a bit. Okay, so someone here said no, synergy is basically dead. Maybe go for a speed no, speed they mean speed nova to that, but that to that extent. And then someone else said it does suck, in my opinion. 8 to 13 years ago. So basically, like, yeah, somewhere between 8 and 13 years ago, may have been the most fun with Trinity, Banshee, and Oberon. Oh, yeah, Oberon. Oberon was like the king of support. Actually, Oberon is a good example now that I think about it, because Oberon had to get a rework not too long ago to basically make him viable by himself. Okay, because he was one of the frames that you absolutely had to use weapons to make up for his lack of being able to basically defend himself to some degree. But they reworked him quite a bit, so now he also falls into that jack of all trades category. Whereas before he was all about healing and, debuffing the enemy. He would heal you, he would debuff the enemy. He was a grade A support character. But in this day and age, that's not what Warframe is going down. Because at the end of the day, I feel like Warframe leans more toward the power fantasy And I don't think there's a lot of room for synergy in the power fantasy. Because right now, the way Warframe seems to work, or seems to want to work, correct me if I'm wrong, comment section below. But right now, it seems like Warframe wants to be more like, you want to feel somewhat powerful with each Warframe. You don't sure, you're not going to feel exactly the same with each Warframe, but Warframes, whichever one you choose, you still will feel powerful. Some Warframe may still be better than others, but at the same time, they're not all strictly support or strictly tank. They're more like jack of all trades, if you will. Now, with that said, tank is an interesting thing I keep bringing up because there are only a handful of Warframes in the game Warframe that I'd consider to be a tank character. Okay, tanky and tank aren't mutually exclusive in my mind, but that's also because a lot of games I play are RPG type game, RPG, JRPGs, whatnot. So I'm used to like the typical, tank, magic caster, and rogue. Tank, magic caster, rogue, warrior type characters, which is why it would it's interesting to me because, see, in the original setup, the original 3 Warframes were actually Excalibur, Vault, and Loki. Yes, Loki was one of the original 3 back in the day, but then they changed it to Excalibur, Vault, and Mag. Mag being the magic caster, Vault being also the magic caster. I get DPS, but really just also a magic caster because Vault is a caster frame, just like Mag is. And then they kept Excalibur because Excalibur is still the all-around balance frame, I guess. He is kind of the face of Warframe. So, yeah, see, he's the face of Warframe. Okay, but yeah, I don't know what made them decide to switch out Loki for Mag. Between you and me, it took me longer to use it was harder for me to use Mag with hardly any mods, as I tried to simulate like a new player experience with just a handful of mods, if even, and it was a lot harder for me to use Mag with low beginner level mods than it was for me to use Loki. But I don't know, maybe I'm missing something there. Okay. But yeah, back to Synergy. I do not think Synergy has a real place in Warframe, not as I believe this person means it. Okay. Can there be synergy among frames? Yes, there can be synergy, but I feel like if 4 copies of Oberon, if all 4 players in Warframe, because as of right now you can have squads of 4, were all Oberon or all one specific frame, then the team would still do just fine because it wouldn't be lacking. Whereas I feel like in some other games, if you had 4 support characters, you would be lacking quite a bit. But I don't think Warframe works that way anymore. I mean, No need for synergy like that at all, especially with Archon shards. Archon shards are a whole other animal because any that literally an Archon shard that regens health, for crying out loud. So yeah. You know what? This video's already gone on way too long. We could low-key call this like a TED Talk type thing. No, I'm not. I'm not saying synergy is my area of expertise. Okay, I'm just saying I like to play video games. So I gave you guys my thoughts. Hopefully, at least one of you guys watched this or listened to it or something. If you made it to the end, I appreciate it. I'm going to end it off here. And with that said, I will catch you guys in the future. Later.